What's up, co-counsels? We have breaking news. This is a little unexpected, but it is not completely surprising. And the reason it's not surprising is because the conviction was written all over the wall. Okay. I said from the very beginning that I did not know exactly how the defense attorney were going to defend against these charges because there's really no real way around it. What's up, Brooklyn? What's up, Brooklyn? Thank you for the photo, by the way. No, I think it was a video. It was a video. I enjoyed your video. Hopefully, you guys had a good weekend, and congratulations to you and your son and daughter-in-law. Okay. I'm talking about Brian Kohlberger. I don't usually get up here on Mondays, or at least it's been a while, but we need to get it out the way. Okay. There's just no way around, there's no way around the charges. Brian Kohlberger was going to get convicted. And I've said it before, I don't usually talk or speak on a defendant's conviction or acquittal. But with Brian Kohlberger, I was as damn sure as Lori Vallow Daybell going to trial. But this was definitely this had a conviction written all over it. But let's get into it. Let's get into it. So ABC News is reporting that Brian Kohlberger has agreed to plead guilty to all counts in the Idaho College murders case. Apparently, this is based on a letter from the prosecutors. Okay. Brian Kohlberger has agreed to plead guilty to all counts in the killings of four University of Idaho students, sparing him from the death penalty, according to a letter sent to victims' family members informing them of the plea deal. So there was no real, I guess, to some extent, there was a negotiation. The negotiation being the death penalty being taken off the table, because the defense attorneys have tried anything and everything. If we go back, if my timeline is accurate, I believe that was December of 2024 when their arguments were flopping. Like defense arguments were flopping, and that's why even if the arguments, there's just no way around it. I would have been curious though to find out how they were going to defend um, the charges. Ultimately, it would have possibly depended on just preserving his rights for appeal, but Brian Kohlberger is going to get convicted. There's just no way around it. Okay. So they go on to say, ABC News goes on to say that Kohlberger, who was charged with 4 counts of first degree murder and 1 count of burglary in connection with the 2022 killings of roommates, I'm not going to butcher these people's names, okay, will be sentenced to 4 consecutive life sentences on the murder counts and the maximum penalty of 10 years on the burglary count, according to the plea agreement. Um, Let me see. How different? Defense really had no bargaining power. They had no real bargaining power except for, penalty. Yeah, they had no. Because I was just thinking again, oftentimes when it comes to plea dealing, there's some type of true negotiation where a defendant is not pleading guilty to all the charges, but here there's just no way around it. There was no way around it. Okay. All right, let's go on. So he will also waive all rights to appeal. So he has no appellate rights once he enters into this plea agreement. I guess that is not far fetched. That's usually how Um, plea agreements work. Oftentimes, the defendant waives the appellate rights. So it's not that surprising. So prosecutors anticipate sentencing to take place in late July. Damn, they're moving this thing. In late July, as long as Kohlberger enters the guilty plea as expected at a change of plea hearing that's scheduled for Wednesday. All right, so this is what we're going to do. I won't be live on Tuesday. I'll be here on Wednesday. All right, so we can cover the plea. So that's according to a letter that was received by the family of one of the victims. So I suppose somebody reached out to the media. The plea comes just weeks before Kohlberger's trial was set to begin. Jury selection was set to start on August 4, and opening statements were scheduled for August 18. A part of me, when I first heard this news, right, I was trying to figure out, unless they had a deadline by the court, right? Let me think back, because right now I'm really just speculating. It's one of okay, let me complete my thought. The one thought that I had was, why did defense show their hand so early? What I mean by this is they really had no plea bargaining power though. Oftentimes, or at least the way that I have done it. So I hate plea dealing, by the way. I really hate plea dealing. I hate plea dealing, but I understand. I completely understand plea dealing under these circumstances. I completely get it. But that said, the way that oftentimes, I guess the timing of entering into a plea, often, again, I'm processing a whole lot of things because I'm having conversations with myself in my head. I'm trying to figure, there's a part of me that's trying to figure out if the parties were scheduled for another hearing prior to jury selection, right? Because if that's the case, um, typically a defendant wants to wait, or at least the defense attorney, or the public defender, typically they want to wait until the 11th hour, um, to reveal that the client or the defendant intends on entering a guilty plea. Okay. That's typically how it works, because under those circumstances, you kind of have some bargaining power. But again, Brian Kohlberger had zero bargaining power, zero bargaining power. But I'm also thinking that maybe the attorneys decided to um, they decided to show their hand early on, so they don't have to do all the preparations that will go into, I don't know, whatever else that they had to complete. Because I don't, yeah, unless they had another, or unless they were preparing for another pre-trial hearing, the only thing really would have been what, opening and the rest. What's up, Allie? Allie, I had to come up here because Brian Kohlberger is entering, or he has agreed to enter a guilty plea. And I was just saying how, um, I guess it's not surprising to some extent. I completely understand. It does make sense because he was facing the death penalty, and I've been very clear from the beginning that my main reason for following this trial is the penalty phase, because I am opposed to the death penalty. I don't care what the accusations are. I don't believe in the death penalty. And I mean, you and I and Jasmine, shout out to co-counsel Jasmine from 2024, but we've had those discussions before. I am opposed to the death penalty. So that was my primary reason for following this trial. So um they have reached an agreement. Kohlberger is said to plead guilty on Wednesday. He gets no reduction in the charges. He pretty much has to plead guilty to the charges, and the trade-off will be that he will not be sentenced to he'll not be he'll not be sentenced to death. Instead, he will be set, he'll serve out life sentences. Apparently, it's consecutive life sentences. If you ask me, it's kind of like the death penalty. The exception being you're not necessarily on death row, you're not moving closer to the chamber, um, as you know, as your sentence goes on. So that's where we are. Let me get back to this ABC News article. Let's see. Okay, so apparently the plea comes just weeks before Kohlberger's trial was set to begin. Jury selection was set to start on August 4th, and opening arguments were scheduled for August 18. Prosecutors said in the letter to families that the state was approached last week by Kohlberger's defense team asking to be presented with an offer. Prosecutors said they then met with available family members last week, weighed the right path forward, and made a formal offer to Kohlberger. The resolution is a sincere attempt to seek justice for your families, prosecutors wrote in a letter. This agreement ensures that the defendant will be convicted, will spend the rest of his life in prison, and will not be able to put you and other families through the uncertainty or decades of post-conviction appeals. So pretty much even the prosecution is pretty much telling the families, right, there that there is going to be post conviction, or there are going to be post conviction appeals. According to the prosecution, they saw the conviction at trial on the wall. That conviction was written. Listen, when I woke up, I don't know if that was November or whatever. Let me see. I was definitely a public defender. As far as the office that I was in, let me think. I think I was at the other office. In any event, when I woke up, I read the headlines. I was like, whoever gets caught, it's over for you. Um, and then when Kohlberger was arrested in Pennsylvania, I was like, it's over. There's no way. Again, I'd have been very interested in finding out what the defense was going to argue. I was curious. I just did not see a path out for Kohlberger. And I've said it before, whether he in fact, whether he is the factual perpetrator or if he's the legal perpetrator, there's no way for the person that's charged with these crimes. Absolutely no way. As soon as the prosecution starts off with opening statements, and they talk about how 4 college students were slaughtered, there's just no way for whoever the defendant is. So Ali says, my logic is we say it's wrong to murk somebody, take someone else's life, but it's okay for the government to is that take or rake? Take someone's life. It's contradicting and not logical, in my opinion. Uh, Let me see. I agree with you on that point. I agree with you on that point. Let's see what else. Okay, so I get distracted very easily here, but pretty much again in this letter to the families, the prosecutors could somewhat guarantee a conviction at the trial level, but they had no idea what was going to happen at the appellate level. Okay, they go on to say that your viewpoints weighed heavily in our decision making process, and we hope that you may come to appreciate why we believe this resolution is in the best interest of justice. Random case. I think there's a case, I think that's in Michigan. I saw it today, did not really look much into it, but the victim's mother, the victim's mother is opposed to a plea agreement between the prosecution and the defendant in that case. And listen, I've been in enough criminal courts to know that you do not always know. I mean, with Kohlberger is going to get convicted. There's no way around that. But for most trials are kind of uncertain. And even, especially when appeals are involved, sometimes family members want certain things, and that's just not how the law works. We're going to cover, I've not forgotten about there's a case out of Florida. I mean, because the Kohlberger trial is not going to go anymore. So we need to move on to other. I can go down my list. Okay. I have a list of cases that I actually wanted to cover or plan on covering. I just probably would not have had the time. But now we have time because the Kohlberger trial is not going. Okay. Um, there's a case out of Florida. I don't remember the name of the defendant, but I can find the case. In that case, though, a plea agreement was entered into. He was charged with some domestic violence charges. I don't remember if it was like an attempted murder or something along those lines. Um, in any event, the plea agreement, the plea between the defendant and the prosecution was for him to be sentenced to 20 years. This is a man that was like in his 50s or something along those lines. The judge was going to accept the plea. The victim shows up to court. Victim says, "No, I don't want, what is this? I don't want to guilt. I don't want him to, I'm not satisfied with a 20-year sentence. I want life." So under those circumstances, I don't remember if it was life or maybe 25 years or something. She wanted real time, okay? And I mean 20 years is real time. In any event, um, the under those circumstances, the judge decides, okay, she's not going to proceed with the plea. They went to trial, and at trial, that man was acquitted. That man was acquitted, and that victim was sick. Um, so Brooklyn says, why would he take a plea? He has nothing to lose going to trial. Of course he does. He was going to be put to death. They had a firing squad that was ready for him. And let's quickly see how many people are currently on death row in Idaho. How many people are on death row in Idaho? Let's see. There are currently 9 people on death row in Idaho. That's not a lot of people. I mean, it's a lot of people for the death penalty. But as far as Brian Kohlberger's number or he's positioning the queue, that's just 8 people. That's not 20 people. That's not 100,000 people. So death was imminent. So the main reason he entered the guilty plea is to preserve his life, if you want to phrase it that way. Um, and I've said it before, I don't like plea dealing, but under these circumstances, I completely understand why Brian Kohlberger would enter a plea. I completely get it. I completely get it. And if you listen to the defense arguments throughout, their primary argument, they were never arguing that um, Brian Kohlberger is, I'm using this word loosely, but they were never arguing that he is innocent. They were never arguing that he is not. Close the, stop, Zeta. Close the door.
Okay. Patricia.
Patricia's not my name.
Yes, it
Close
is.
the door.
This is Patricia.
Oh my goodness. Okay, so what was I saying? I have a halfway teenager. Listen, okay, I'm getting distracted. Move on. So the defense was never arguing that. I mean, in theory, they may have said it with their third party culprit defense, but if you listen closely to the defense focus in their pre-trial motions, their attack was more so to take the death penalty off the table. Their attack was never along the lines of an acquittal. If you listen to, I believe, what week, whatever week this is, if we go back to last week, oh, actually, I think what precipitated the plea deal is because they realized that the trial would not be delayed. Delaying the commencement of the trial would not necessarily have secured an acquittal, but it would have given their client more time. And that's usually what you usually defense wants more time for their client. Um, and then if we go back to the proceedings from last week, if you listen to the defense attorney, her arguments were focused on post conviction relief. Her focus was always on preserving Brian Kohlberger's rights and not so much on an acquittal. And that's why this plea, even though I did not really see it coming, it's not really something that I considered. It makes absolute sense. It makes absolute sense because Brian Kohlberger is going to get convicted. I've been saying that since last year. I've been saying it from the very first time when I woke up and the headline was four college students were, murked. He was going to get convicted. There's just no way around it. No way around it. Um, so to answer your question, Brooklyn, he definitely had something to lose, which is he was going to go to the slaughterhouse. There was no way around it. He was going. Okay, let's see. Let's get back to this article. Okay, so apparently or the state will seek restitution for the victims and their families according to the agreement. Okay. I guess I have never seen. Have I ever seen restitution in a murder case? I don't think I've ever seen restitution in a murder case. I don't ever remember being in a courthouse and a prosecutor asking for restitution in a murder. I've seen it often in property damage, theft, things along those lines, um, crimes that deal with property or property crimes. Yeah, I've not seen restitution. Maybe crimes against the person, but to the extent of assault. Um, Let me see. That's as far as I can remember. Okay. Ali said shout out to all public defenders and Max Shard and Abate for not changing and slowly refusing to use the bike so everyone in the courtroom can hear him. I think wasn't Abate in no, today McBurney had a civil suit on. I think he showed up randomly. All right, let me quickly go parent you guys. I'll play some random video. I need to get some food. My kid's gonna make a mess in that kitchen. So how do I present? Yeah, give me about 5 minutes and then I'll be back. But let's play. I don't know what you guys are about to watch. I've not watched it. I've not watched this, but here.
Shocking turn of events. Brian Kohlberger has accepted a plea deal. Kohlberger was charged in the brutal stabbings of Kaylee Gonsalves, Madison Mogan, Xana Kernodle, and Ethan Chapin in their off-campus house in November of 2022. The prosecution proposed dropping the death penalty in exchange for Kohlberger pleading guilty to the four murders and to the burglary charge. Kohlberger must also agree to spend.
Well, I already read all of this. My kid already got her food, you guys, so I don't have to. I don't have to do that. All right, let's quickly go back here. Let's go back here. Okay, so apparently the state will seek restitution for the victims and their families. We keep the families of the victims in our hearts as each deals with this outcome in their own way. The University of Idaho said in a statement, no outcome can replace what they lost. We will never forget the four incredible lives taken. Listen, Brian Kohlberger does not owe me anything, but I have questions. I have real questions. I have, unless this is like part of a study or book or so, I don't know, a research paper, which should be really twisted. But I have real questions. Yeah, I, I have real questions. I have real questions. I want to say why. Maybe when he gets sentenced, maybe he speaks. I don't exactly know what he'd say. I don't even know why he should say anything. But I do have real questions. So Ali says Abate was in McBurney's courtroom, the trial last week. I sent you a message though. You're like the first person I've ever sent a message on TikTok. I don't even know if it's called a message or if it's called a tick or a talk. I don't know. I don't know that you reply. I also did not check. I had questions about that Mosley trial. I forgot what the question was about, Ali. I don't remember what the question was about. But yeah, I had questions about. Oh, but Abate, he was the prosecutor in that case. Yeah, he was the prosecutor in that case. All right, let's move on. So, okay, they go on to talk about what happened to the kids. So, two roommates inside survived, including one roommate who told authorities in the middle of the night she saw a man walking past her in the house, according to court documents. The roommate described the intruder as not very muscular, but athletic build with bushy eyebrow. I don't know. Can I move this? No. Can I move it? All right. I don't know why I can no longer see Brian Kohlberger's face on here. Oh, there we go. I guess those are bushy eyebrows. According to the documents. What's up, Benji? I'm sorry, Benji. This is so random, but I did have to come up here because literally I got home, and my kid and I ran errands. We went to a grocery store, we went to a UPS, and then as soon as I put the groceries away, I randomly see a notification that Brian Kohlberger is entering a guilty plea. So I had to come up here. It's not our regular time. It's not our regular day, but I did come up here to, share this news with you guys. Um, Tomorrow, though, actually, I had planned on skipping tomorrow, but let's do tomorrow. We can do tomorrow, but we're going to talk a little bit about Diddy tomorrow. Okay. Let's talk about Diddy. One thing about me, you guys, I'm not a fake lawyer. Okay. In Diddy, last week I told you guys that Diddy is going to need somebody up there, some person with money, some person with some form of education that could pretty much, that would be his saving grace. And today, we find out that there's a juror 25, some individual with a PhD. He listens to classical music, and he appears, or at least the way it's being reported, it sounds like he already has his mind made up and he has no real interest in participating in jury deliberations, because it really sounds like he's leaning towards Diddy. So let me think about it. Let me think about it. Do we come up here and talk about Diddy tomorrow, or do we just, because Wednesday I'll be here. Wednesday we have to be up here. The reason why we have to be up here on Wednesday is because Brian Kohlberger will enter his guilty plea on when, unless, listen, I would also not be shocked if he went to court and while he's in court he just changes his mind. It's happened. It's happened before. Not with Brian Kohlberger, but I've seen defendants um, go to court, and when it's time to enter the plea, they're like, can't do it. So I'd not be surprised if that happened, or maybe I would. I don't know, but that's another thing to consider. So tell Fever I said, what's up? Tell Fever we miss him. Actually, after this, now that I'm glad I have a real job and I don't rely on YouTube, because for people that rely on YouTube, with this Brian Kohlberger case being off the table, they have to scramble and figure out how to milk money out of YouTube. So yeah, because this actually would have been the biggest case, the biggest trial of the year. I suppose next we move on to Luigi Mangione. There's another avenue, and then there's another. You guys know I don't usually talk about cases where people are accused of harming kids. So that, what's her name? Carrie Curry somebody? I'm not. No, but Curry, never mind. Maybe that one we can actually cover because she's accused of offing her husband and then writing a book about grieving that you'd read to her kids. So that one I stand corrected. That one we probably can cover, but ordinarily little kids, I, I don't touch that stuff. All right, let us move on. And Benji, hopefully you had a good weekend. Okay, so the shocking quadruple killings shook the small college town of Moscow. I don't know if it's Moscow. I don't know. I was watching the WNBA. No, 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 the NBA draft. I'm like 4 or 5 days late, but I was watching the NBA draft. There's some person that's from someplace in Russia, and I believe they said Moscow. I don't know, Moscow, one of the two. So okay, so the killings in Moscow catapulted to national media interest and launched a nearly 7 week manhunt. In December of 2022, Koberger, a criminology PhD student at nearby Washington State University at the time, was arrested at his parents' home in Pennsylvania. And listen, when Callie, Callie said, because this person or because Kohlberger was a criminology PhD candidate. She said he did that. According to Callie, that's all she needed to know. Okay. So a DNA matching Kohlberger was found on a Ka bar knife sheath by one of the victim's bodies, prosecutors have said. Defense lawyers have said Kohlberger was driving around alone on the night the killings occurred. So that's the end of it. I guess we have to wait until Wednesday to, hear exactly what it is that they're going to bring out. Um, I don't know that he gets sentenced on the spot, though. I don't know anything about Idaho, but ordinarily for felonies, there has to be a pretrial sentencing, a pretrial investigation, and then a pretrial report, and then sentencing can occur. So I don't exactly know how, unless there's a law in Idaho that says if you're pleading guilty to murder, then they just send you off. That's not how I've seen it transpire in practice. Okay, let's see what else can we find. And that's so crazy because I was literally today, I was preparing the live for tomorrow and what we're going to talk about. And what we're going to talk about would have been the possible witnesses um, that declined, some witnesses in Pennsylvania that were pretty much fighting appearing in Idaho to testify. So that's what we're supposed to talk about tomorrow. And I get home. I get home and they say, no, man's taking a plea deal. Okay, so let's see. Let's see. All right, let's just cover that let's cover it so we don't have to talk about this again. So, possible witnesses for Brian Kohlberger trial contest travel to Idaho. Um, I don't know why I don't know. Don't complain, don't complain, don't complain. Just move on. Okay. So he's been portrayed in numerous media accounts as the man who taught murder suspect Brian Kohlberger how to box. Okay. I don't blame him. I'm not showing up for that either. Okay. But Jesse Harris told a Monroe County judge Monday that he barely remembers the former Pleasant Valley High School student now accused of killing four University of Idaho students. I don't blame this coach. I would not want to participate in that either. I knew him as a 15 to 16-year-old, Harris told Pennsylvania District Judge Arthur Zulik. We trained thousands of kids. Brandon, a former schoolmate of Kohlberger, said he was similarly dumbfounded as to why defense attorneys want him to testify at the 30-year-old's murder trial in Idaho. Listen, shout out to all public defenders. Um, We're going to talk about Diddy in a minute, or maybe we won't. But here's how I know these attorneys were going above and beyond, because they were looking to put people on the stand. They were going to get a whole bunch of random people to take the stand. And in this case, apparently, they were going to get a boxing coach and then another a former schoolmate to take the stand and testify. And that's why, just to talk about Diddy a little bit, I'm still puzzled by their failure to call witnesses. Okay. They're not dealing with like a Joe Brown off the street or whatever. They're dealing with somebody that has money, somebody that could have flown in their own ASAP 12 or whoever to take the stand on his behalf. I don't understand that. I don't understand that move, but it's yeah. Let's move on. So this classmate then goes on to say, my relationship with Brian has been minimal and distant since high school. What's his name? Brandon Andriola said, noting that he had not spoken to Kohlberger since 2020. What year is this? 25? So 5 years ago, 2 years before the homicides. Despite the objections, the judge ordered them to travel to Idaho for the trial, which is scheduled for this summer in Boise. A third Pennsylvania man, Anthony Soma, did not contest his subpoena and will testify. Three other potential witnesses will have hearings next week. Okay, so that answers my question. My question was, I'd questioned whether defense decided to show their hand in order not to proceed with any more pretrial hearings and motions. So this pretty much just answers that, so that they do not necessarily have to do any more work. They don't have to continue working on this. They have to focus on the sentencing phase, because the client's going to enter a guilty plea again, unless unless he goes to court on Wednesday and he just changes his mind. Um, so Kohlberger is charged with 4 counts of first-degree murder and a count of felony burglary stemming from the student's demise in November of 2022. At the time, he was a PhD student in Washington State University's Criminal Justice and Criminology Department, living just over the Idaho state line from Moscow in Pullman, Washington. Now that I think about this, Brian Kohlberger, right? Because I want to know the why. I don't exactly know that we'll find out the why. But now that I was thinking about it, this would make a good dissertation for somebody that's into criminology. This would make a really, really good paper. If But for that to even happen, I don't know that it happens now. Maybe what, he's 31, maybe what, in another 30 years or so he might, unless he plans on writing his own paper. But right, because he's going to be incarcerated, so I don't know, they have libraries and educational I know this is so twisted. If he writes his, maybe he writes his own paper, and we get to learn a part of criminology that we did not previously know. But other than that, um, this the subject of Brian Kohlberger would make a decent paper for a criminologist. I'm just saying, once upon a time, I did want to be a criminologist. And then I do still want to get a PhD. I've searched around to see what to do the PhD in. Uh, it's probably going to be easiest for me to just get a PhD in law in, what is this, an SJD or whatever. But the problem is, with an SJD, even though it is a doctorate, to like a legal doctorate, nobody calls you doctor. Nobody calls you doctor. But that would be the easiest, because I don't have to write extensively. Something like criminology, though, you actually do have. I did look it up. There's like some university in Pennsylvania that I looked at, but I'm too busy parenting, so I'm not doing that. I'm not doing that. But Benji says, "Wow, I'm getting XP for chatting. What does that mean?" I'm a little old school, so I don't know what XP stands for. Yeah, but this would Brian Kober, why'd you do this? This would make a really good paper. This would make a good paper. All right, so let's move on. Kohlberger, they already said this over and over again. Kohlberger is charged for 4 counts of first degree murder and a count of felony burglary stemming from the student's demise in November of 2022. At the time, or I guess I'm just reading the same part. Let's move on. Prosecutors plan to seek the death penalty if Kohlberger is convicted. I suppose this is before. Yeah, because this article, I saw this early today before we found out about the plea or before news broke about the plea. Apparently, his attorneys have maintained his innocence for more than 2.5 years of court proceedings. The victims were U of I. What does that mean? Does that mean University of Idaho? Seniors Madison Mogan and Kylie Goncalves, both 21, junior Zaynard Knodel, 20, and freshman Ethan Chapin. The three women lived in the off campus home with two female roommates who went unharmed in the attack, while Chapin was Knodel's boyfriend and stayed over for the night. These facts, the allegations are just, I don't know. All right, so former friend fears reputational damage. Monday's hearing in Eastern Pennsylvania was scheduled to address rare interstate subpoenas filed by the defense, which required approval by a Pennsylvania judge, Abigail Parnell. The attorney representing Kohlberger on behalf of his Idaho Public Defense team did not say in open court why she wanted the men to testify. She and the judge had a sidebar conversation on the subject that was then redacted from the record at Parnell's request. In court Monday, is today Monday? Yeah. In court Monday, Andriola complained about the intense media coverage of the case, saying he believed he could lose his job if he tested. I mean, he has real concerns. He definitely has real concerns. He did not reveal where he worked except to say that it is a publicly traded company. Definitely. So Andriola said that some of Kohlberger's family members had lost their jobs after his arrest and decried the YouTubers and podcasters who had included photos of his wedding in their coverage. Yeah, he had, listen, this former classmate, his concerns absolutely valid, absolutely valid. We've seen that in the Massachusetts case, how people have gone on to attack not just the witnesses, but they've gone as far as attacking his name Hank Brennan, which is uncalled for. So with these social media people, you just do not know. You do not know because these super fans and I don't know. Let us move on. Okay, so Benji says there's a ranking system for being a top fan in the chat. Really? How do I see that? How do I see that? Is it in here? I don't know. Brooklyn said, was he married? I believe the wedding photographs that are being talked about referred to Andriola. What's his name again? I forgot his first name. It's somewhere up here. I cannot lose my spot. Andriola is a former classmate of Brian Kohlberger, and he was subpoenaed by the defense attorneys to testify on Kohlberger's behalf. Okay, it probably would have had something to do with boxing. I don't know, something to do with boxing. All right. So he goes on to say that reputation is everything. I do not wish to have this attention. It's my belief that the media will only pick up if I'm brought out to Idaho. He said, I don't want it misconstrued that I'm out there supporting the situation Brian has himself in. He added, he has. Andriola has real valid concerns. All right. Andriola, who appeared in court without an attorney, also told the judge that he has a newborn at home and his wife needs his help. These people would have showed up to his home, okay? After the judge ordered him to attend the trial, Andriola asked if he could testify via video. Zulik said that would be up to an Idaho judge. Harris, who said he owns a small construction firm as well as trains boxing students at Northampton County Community College 2 nights a week, asked to be excused from traveling to Idaho because his wife is undergoing medical tests that may intensify in the coming months. He told the judge that he has already given the defense statements about his contact with Kohlberger as a teen and doesn't know how much more useful information he could share. Harris also bristled at the characterization that he coached Brian Kohlberger. They didn't say Brian Kohlberger, just Kohlberger. That he coached Kohlberger to be a skilled fighter, as he'd seen in some media accounts. The teen came to his gym with his father because he needed something to do, Harris said. Brian never threw a punch at anyone, he said. He wasn't there to box. He was there, like a lot of kids, to work out, to build confidence, and to lose weight. So I suppose that's probably the bulk. That's probably the testimony that I think that's probably the testimony that the defense was going to elicit to show that Brian does not have a propensity for violence. But that's just based on this one paragraph, okay? So perhaps the most perplexed witness at the hearing was Ralph A. Why did they disclose all these people's their names? Ralph A. Vecchio. I'm screwing these people's names over. Vecchio the third, who owns the used car dealership where Kohlberger's parents bought a 2015 Hyundai Elantra in 2019. Vecchio argued that he never met Kohlberger, and the defendant never even brought the car in for service. After some back and forth about whether attorneys meant to summon Vecchio's father, Jesus, 88-year-old Ralph. Why are you dragging an 88-year? I guess, but that's a lot. Those are courts. That's courts. I probably would have done the same thing. Okay, so the judge continued the matter until July 7th. Today's what? June? Okay. So two potential witnesses, William Searfoss, a correction officer. Before we move on to the next paragraph, I don't know this, but it makes me wonder whether the defense would have called witnesses from Washington. I don't know if Kohlberger had a roommate, uh, people that were much in closer proximity to, Idaho, because right now they're really just focused on people in Pennsylvania. But then again, these folks probably could not really be shaken up by the prosecution. Let's move on. So, two potential witnesses, William Searfoss, a correction officer, that's interesting, and Maggie Sanders, who works at the local school district as a school psychologist, will also have hearings next week. Kohlberger worked for the Pleasant Valley School District as a part-time security officer after graduation. That's actually pretty interesting. Uh, the reason why it's interesting is because oftentimes people that have a real interest in, let's say, criminology would for sure be drawn to work such as like security work. And that's what he did. I mean, I need somebody to write a paper. Somebody write a paper. Somebody examine his brain. I have real questions. Okay. So in any event, Kohlberger worked as a part-time security officer after graduation. He resigned in June 2021, according to school board meetings. Searfoss will likely be called simply to confirm records of Kohlberger's short post-arrest stay at the jail in Monroe County, the judge noted. Kohlberger's brief time in custody in Pennsylvania while awaiting extradition to Idaho was uneventful. So I suppose the argument there, or what the defense was trying to elicit, is that he appeared to be cooperative, did not cause any problems, no disciplinary issues. I think that's where they're going to head with that. So another man with ties to Kohlberger was in court Monday. Anthony Soma told the judge he did not contest the subpoena and was quickly dismissed. He did not state his relationship with Kohlberger, but appears to have attended the same technical school as Kohlberger during their overlapping high school years. Still, one other possible witness, Anne Parham, who was a teacher and administrator in the public school district before she retired in 2022, already agreed to travel to Idaho to testify if called as a witness. As a result, her summons to appear Monday was canceled. I guess, is this the psychologist? The hearing took place before a packed courtroom. Kohlberger's case has garnered intense media coverage, including a controversial Dateline television episode that revealed leaked details about the case, prompting the presiding judge in Idaho to order an investigation into who violated a gag order. The CBS True Crime, I was going to speculate, but I'll let it go. The CBS True Crime show 48 Hours is also planning a weekly podcast with video during the trial. Well, that's not going to happen. None of the witnesses were accompanied by attorneys Monday, and all left the courthouse without speaking to the press. Parnell declined to answer questions as she walked to her car. Kohlberger's trial is set to start in July. We know that's not happening. Okay, friends on 911 call speak out. The two friends who arrived to help the two surviving roommates checked the house later that morning and discovered the bodies of their friends spoke out for the first time Monday in an interview with ABC's Good Morning America. I saw that, did not watch the interview. I'm not really into watching interviews, like just let me see the court proceedings, okay? So Hunter Johnson and Emily Alant, who can be heard talking with a dispatcher on the call made to 911 just before noon. Johnson told the morning program he wore shorts and sandals over to the King Road house, not expecting to stay very long. I would say as soon as you get there, you know something's wrong, okay? Johnson said. He added that he felt God was with him in that moment, lending him the strength to get through that day. Johnson and Alant, who are dating, are set to appear in a forthcoming 4-part docuseries called One Night in Idaho, which is set to begin streaming on Amazon Prime on July 11th. It acts okay. That makes sense why they're being interviewed to promote the docuseries. It acts as a companion to a new book by James Patterson and Vicky Ward called The Idaho 4 that comes out July 14th. Dang, people are making money off of. Let's move on. Good Morning America also revealed that a fifth person. Okay, so this fifth person apparently was also there when Johnson found Chapin and Canoddle's bodies in her room on the second floor of the home. As soon as I stepped in the home, let's skip past that stuff. I'm not interested in those interviews. All right, so that marks the end. Let's see. Okay, so apparently a judge reacts. We judge. No, it's not a judge it's not, that wouldn't even make sense. Why do you think that? Okay, so somebody's furious. Behind a paywall, I'm not paying for this. But somebody's apparently furious about the plea deal. Not going to New York Times. Okay, so that's the news. So Bryan Kohlberger, he's pleading guilty on Wednesday, or he's expected to. He's expected to plead guilty on Wednesday. Again, he could always change his mind. But he is expected to plead guilty on Wednesday. So I'm switching up the schedule for the week. So I'll be here on Wednesday. I won't be here on Tuesday. I'll be here. Let me think. Do I want to come up here for Diddy or not? Let's just talk about Diddy a little bit. All right. Do we want to do that? I don't know. I need to iron though. I need to iron. I need to iron. I need to iron. Okay, let's quickly cover Diddy just because it's on my mind. Let's cover Diddy a little bit. So we have juror 25. Let me see if I can find juror 25. Can I find it? Okay. So here we go. This is from people. I watched a little bit of a coverage today. Not all of it, but I do understand what some of the concerns were regarding juror number 25. Okay. So apparently, Diddy jurors told the judge that they were concerned one of them could not follow instructions. Okay. So one of the jurors deliberating in Diddy's fate apparently have a tough time following instructions. Their fellow jurors told the judge presiding over the case. I need more specifics though. Yeah, I need specifics. In any event, let's go on. Just a couple of hours into deliberations at Diddy's trial, the jury foreperson passed a note to the judge indicating that the members were concerned that juror number 25 cannot follow the judge's instructions. The judge ordered the attorneys from both parties to confer on the fate of juror number 25, a 51-year-old Manhattan man with a PhD in molecular biology and neuroscience. He had previously indicated during jury selection that he was interested in opera and the outdoors and disclosed that he had seen the video of Combs allegedly assaulting Cassie at a Los Angeles hotel prior to his jury service. More information to add. What I remember from today's coverage is that this juror said he had a partner, I believe, and the word partner to me, it leads me to believe that he might be in a relationship with another man, or maybe somebody that does not identify as cis. That's my thinking. That's my thinking. I could be wrong on that, but that's my thinking, right? So based on that information, last week I came up here and I told you guys that for Diddy to stand somewhat of a chance, I don't see an acquittal. I don't see a full acquittal across the board, okay? But for Diddy to stand a chance in the sense of having somebody hold out, or in order for there to be a holdout, he pretty much, not even that. What I was saying is that in order to have somebody understand a little bit of Diddy's position, or at least his lifestyle in the freak offs, he pretty much needed somebody that had to be highly educated. And I don't remember the doctor's name. Some doctor in New York City, he was the COVID czar. I don't remember his name. His last name began with like a V or something. Vamar. It was something, okay? But in any event, to me, all right, as far as my reading of jurors, as far as my reading of the nature of these charges, as far as my reading of Diddy's status as a so-called mogul, or somebody that is affluent, has a lot of influence, for regular people cannot relate to Diddy. Okay, regular people cannot relate to Diddy. The types of people that will relate to this man definitely has to be people with I don't know, I guess I could say an exciting sexual life, if that's a thing, or people that do things that other people would not be doing in the bed. I mean, that's their business. But he would also need people that are highly educated and are accepting of certain types of lifestyles and way of living. So the reason why I brought up the doctor is because this man, um, I mean, him going to sex parties, whatever, do you, okay? The why I had brought him up though, because it pretty much highlighted um some of his privilege, because this was him and his wife were attending these sex parties when folks really should have been social distancing. So Diddy needs jurors who are who can kind of reason that certain rules do not apply to them or certain rules do not apply to Diddy. Okay. But here's the other thing. I had also not considered so much so the jury makeup. And what I saw today is that most of the jurors are actually men. Okay. Most of the deliberating jurors are men. That does make a difference to some extent because women, listen, if you have a panel of mostly women, it again it also makes a difference on who the jury foreperson is, because that often is a person that has a really strong personality that is likely to influence other um, folks during deliberations. But that's it. The fact that Diddy has mostly men, that helps him to some extent. I don't know how much of that is going to come into play, uh, but for the most part, he definitely needs people that are somewhat wealthy, somewhat affluent, um, highly educated for sure, and people that are accepting of alternative lifestyles. That's what he needs. And we're seeing a little bit of that with juror number 25, because again, based on his profile. Because when I was watching, I think it was Law and Crime, because I watched a bit of Law and Crime when Angelique Levy was covering this Juror 25 issue. And some of the people, there was a man, I had never seen him before. Okay. I would not even remember his name. But one of the contributors that was on the show today, he talked about why I guess they were surprised at the fact that somebody with a PhD and somebody that listens to, I think it was opera or classical music or something along those lines, would present somewhat of an issue as far as jury deliberations are concerned. But to me, that's not surprising. That is the type of person that I would want to deliberate if I was representing a criminal defendant. Oftentimes, from a criminal defense perspective, you want folks that are highly educated. You want folks that can think about the facts from a different perspective. You do not necessarily want individuals that do not have let me phrase it differently. You do not necessarily want um, primarily farm boys, because some of them tend to be more conservative. At least that's what studies from, what is this? Um, what is this? Jury panels and watch groups. That's the data that they have gathered. Okay. Let's see. Is that I think that's all when it comes to juror number 25. They still had to deliberate, though, to some extent. Maybe he gets replaced if he's just out there sitting in a corner and saying, "I'm not doing this." But the defense definitely want him to remain, because he potentially could be their one holdout. Let's see. Are we missing anything else? Do-do-do-do-do-do. Are we missing? Let's see. Oh, so apparently a second note was sent out. I was not aware of that. Let's quickly go over the summary. So Sean Diddy Combs' fate is in the hands of 12 jurors at his trafficking. I'm not reading the S word. Trafficking trial. Blah blah blah. They're giving a warning about graphic and distressing information. So about an hour into jury deliberations, the jury sent a note to the judge saying they were concerned one of their fellow jurors could not follow the court's instructions. A few hours later, they sent a second note asking about drug distribution. I did not hear about this. I guess I was not watching anymore. So they all continue with deliberations on Tuesday. Let's take a closer look. I want to see what the note said about the drug distribution. Let's see. What did they say about the drug distribution? They report this stuff in like reverse order or something. Okay, so the judge instructed the jurors to continue deliberating despite concerns that were raised amongst them. Apparently, a juror repeatedly cannot follow the. I still don't know what that means, though. Like, what does that mean? How's he not following? How is he not following instructions? Okay, so apparently the defense had a good feeling about this juror number 25, because to me that signals a holdout. Uh, All right, former prosecutor, the development in court today. When the jury sent two questions to the judge on their first day of deliberations, may turn out to be a positive sign for Combs for two reasons. This is according to a New York based lawyer and former prosecutor. His name is Mitch Ebner. First, it is unusual for the jurors to send a note to the judge this early. Definitely. Other than asking for logistical help. Second, this note indicates that there may already be a breakdown in the process. A conviction requires all jurors to unanimously agree on a verdict. It is unclear why fellow jurors are concerned with juror number 25 or why they're having trouble following the judge's instruction. What instruction, though? That's what I need to know. Ebner said that a juror can be removed for refusing to deliberate on a case, but cannot be removed for having come to a fixed conclusion about the proper verdict. Correct. Have to wait how it plays out. Okay, court adjourns with a second jury question. Court has adjourned, and we've just ended our first day of jury deliberations. I want to know what the second question is. Jury sent another note to judge. We're just learning that the jury has sent another note to the judge. Defense attorney Mark Ignifilo is holding the note in the courtroom and rereading it, whispering to Diddy, according to reporters in the courtroom. This is the second note the jury has sent today. Earlier, jurors told the judge of concerns. Why do they keep repeating this? Like, move on. I want to know about the note. So a note was sent back to the jury from the judge telling them they had a duty to deliberate and follow the court's instructions. What did the note say? Let me look that up. Sean Diddy Combs, second jury note. Second jury note. Let's see. I just keep talking about jury 25, juror number 25. That's not really what I'm interested in. Yeah, that's not what I'm interested in. I want to know about, oh, maybe I should say drugs, right? Because the note was about drugs. Drug distribution. Drug distribution. I know they're still talking about. Oh, let's go to Reddit. That's what we need to do. Let's go to Reddit. Let's see what the conspiracies are. Let's see Reddit. Diddy, I think. Do they have a subreddit for Diddy or no? Hold on, I'm almost done, folks. Sean Diddy Combs. Oh no, they're just talking about some other stuff. I'm not interested in whatever it is that they're talking about. Okay, so I'm calling it a night. I need to iron. Let us reconvene on Wednesday. Again, we're switching it up because on Wednesday, that is when Bryan Kohberger enters his guilty plea. I need to see it. I need to see if I don't know. Again, he could get out there and change his mind. So I need to see it. All right, folks, let's call it a night. Thanks for tuning in. We reconvene on Wednesday. I will not be live tomorrow. This means that I'll not be live on Thursday either. Okay, so we do Monday and Wednesday, and then Tuesday and Thursday. I don't know what I'm going to be doing, but I won't be live. All right, let us reconvene on Wednesday. I'll schedule that live now so that nobody's confused. Have a great Tuesday.